Thank you for staying with us. It is 10 days to the general election. Presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, has appealed to Nigerians to remain calm and allow the federal government to address the scarcity of naira notes. The naira crisis has generated tension, sparking pockets of protests in different parts of the country. The APC presidential candidate also proffered some solutions to the problem. We have details in this report.
As Nigerians continue to feel the bite of naira crunch, from long queues at automated teller machine points to excess charges at POS to get their hard-earned money, there seems to be no solution in sight. Despite Supreme Court intervention, the Council of State Emergency Resolution, there is no clarity on the fate of Nigerians.
Each of us has the voice.
The presidential candidate of APC, Bola Tinubu, has not only empathized with millions of Nigerians going through the hardship, he has come to the rescue by suggesting 6-point pragmatic solutions to the naira crisis. This 6-point agenda are captured as follows.
All unfinished goods.
Allow old and new naira notes to coexist for 1 year. Immediate suspension of associated charges on online transactions. Bring in fintech companies with capabilities in currency swap program. Mobilize all money deposit banks payments platform to show clear commitment. CBN, NOA and others should commence enlightenment. The CBN and other relevant MDAs form Interagency Action Committee for immediate oversight over cash supply gaps. Experts have lauded these suggestions, explaining that they represent international best practices, and in no time, the pain will ease out. Emmanuel Ajayi, TVC News, Lagos.
Well, joining us now is a lawyer and member of the APC, Sheung Faleye. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good to see you. Good morning.
Now, remember the Ogun statement, the APC presidential candidate made, where he said that fifth columnist and all of that. And, some persons began to read different dimensions to that statement, thinking he wasn't in support of this policy by the central bank and the federal government. Talk to us how necessary it was for him to clear the air with this statement.
I mean, it was necessary, if not for anything, basically to disabuse people's mind as to where it stands on the policy itself. I think from the get-go, the issue has always been the implementation of the policy. There is a general consensus amongst all Nigerians that perhaps it was necessary to swap and redesign the naira, given some of the security implications that it has and all of that. And in the same breath, Ashwaja has always maintained that borrowing from other climes, there was need to give ample time to bet that policy in, and that's really what the challenge has been. It's not about the policy itself, it's about the implementation of the policy, and of course what we now see, the motive behind that policy in the first place. So I think it's very necessary. Sometimes when you criticize a policy, it's also of course very important as a public public sector personality to also give solutions, prefer solutions and all of that to what those challenges may be, and that's what he has done with this public interface.
All right, I wonder what you make of the seeming silence of the Central Bank of Nigeria regarding this. The Supreme Court came up with the resolution the other time. We're waiting for the final part of it later, I think by tomorrow.
Yeah.
And already the banks have started rejecting, because based on the circular they got from the central bank, the deadline for accepting the old notes was over. So after that time, they were supposed to take whatever they have to the central bank directly. That was the circular. But the Supreme Court came up with whatever they came up with. Governors are meeting, leaders are meeting, State Council or Council of State are meeting, advising government, please hold it. But Up until now, the central bank is not saying anything. This has made Nigerians feel the brunt of what's going on, and things are getting worse when it comes to cash availability. What do you make of that situation? The central bank is not saying anything.
It's very dangerous. I was just going to say that it's a very dangerous thing from CBN not to, first and foremost, respect the judgment of the Supreme Court. That judgment was specific, that both naira notes, old and new, should continue to be accepted. And what I expected from a CBN that is in agreement with the rule of law and all of that was for them to indeed direct the banks to give effect to that judgment. And so that's a very dangerous precedent to set. I'm not surprised that they've buried their heads in shame, really, because the implementation of this policy, as we can see clearly, shows that there is some lack of competence in, very articulating a policy process that they began in the first place. So really, I hope that their silence means that they're really doing everything behind the scene to make all of these sorry states pass, and we hope to see a revamped policy in a short while. But be that as it may, I think it's important to also look at the silence of other stakeholders, political stakeholders that are generally affected by this. I'm very, very surprised that everybody has really kept quiet. And if you look at it, even when we say Ashwaju, whether he's in support or not, he's the only one that has been front and center of this policy from the get-go. And his stand is always pro-people, where he's talking about the effect that this policy has had on the poor and the common man. I don't see any other candidate or any other party making that point, or even preferring solutions that will alleviate some of these challenges that we have. Otherwise, what we're hearing them say is that Nigerians should continue their sufferings, that it is all well and good. And we know that it is not all well and good on the streets of Lagos, Kaduna, Abuja, Ekiti, everywhere. There's uniformity of suffering as we see it. And I'm very surprised that they've chosen to err on the side of self-interest.
Right. The presidential candidate of the APC said that from one of the solutions he proffered that the CBN should immediately follow the advice of the Council of State meeting, which was held on Friday, to ensure that both the old notes and the new notes, coexist side by side. But we are not seeing that. And Nigerians, the tension, to ease off the tension, he said this should be done immediately. I'm really wondering what really do you see is the issue with the CBN not responding as quickly as it should, and also looking at this solution your candidate has proffered?
Well, he proffered several solutions, but I think one of the key solutions that I think will give clarity and transparency to the process is actually that intergovernment and interagency committee that is suggested that they should look into the process of distributing available cash, because I think CBN has clearly lost the trust of Nigerians and of every key stakeholders regarding this process, and it will be very important even for its own credibility to allow for an independent agent or independent panelists comprising perhaps the DSS, the EFCC, the central bank, the banks themselves, and other relevant agencies to actually have a holistic view of this. Also, another thing that is very critical and that we've seen from some of the feedback is that there's been serious lack of engagement regarding this process. I think the CBN, utilizing the expertise of Ministry of Information, National Orientation Agency, like Ashwaju has suggested, should also undertake extensive engagement with members of the public. You will be surprised that in certain areas of this country, they are, apart from lack of access to financial institutions and all of those ATMs and banks that require, they have no real deep knowledge as to what is being being tried to achieve. That's second. I think another thing is, of course, also to ensure what is the preparedness of the banking system for this sort of surge. Well, how big, how robust is their infrastructure? We've seen at the time that this policy kicked off, the near collapse of the banking infrastructure as we know it. We were not able to send, money electronically. I even heard there was a situation where some banks were rejecting checks just because, they couldn't post, these checks across to each other. So that means that there's some level of work to be done regarding the sort of infrastructure that is in place to take care of the volume of transactions that we envisage as a result of this policy. So those are the key issues that the CBN must concern themselves with.
Well, initially at the beginning, before the first deadline of January the 31st, the CBN said that its senior officials went across the country for about a week or so trying to engage Nigerians on the need to do the swap, the old notes for the redesigned notes, that they went across the country to engage Nigerians, and that they also had about 30,000 super agents across the country also doing that. What do you say to that? Is it that that wasn't enough?
Clearly, it wasn't enough. And, sometimes when we speak about these things, there's really no much to say than what we see across the country. 30,000 super agents. I don't see any super agents across Lagos. All I see is people queuing to enter banking hall and to access ATM. Then when we talk about engagement, do we really think 90 days or almost 60 days or 30 days, because I'm not even sure when the engagement started, is enough to galvanize Nigerians towards this policy? It's really not enough in my view. The North itself, the various crannies of this country would take, it would take a number of months to really reach, to people for this sort of defining policy. But what is clear to me is that the CBN clearly, if you look at the CBN Act, Section 20 of its Act clearly gives it the mandate to change and swap currency as subject to the president's approval and all of that. But that act is specific. The act is specific to the effect that you must redeem the currency at par or at face value. And that's really, there's no ambiguity about that. And what we've seen, as it's evident right now, is that the money that has been exchanged has not been exchanged at par. You put money into the bank and you're not getting the exact value back, or you're being given in trickles. That's really clearly against the law. And it then means that the premise upon which this policy was based is null and void. It's really, from the beginning, a wrong premise. And the factual element behind that is that you're looking to recall 3 trillion naira worth of cash from the economy, yet you've printed, as a matter of strategy, 300 billion. That in itself shows that you've gone against the law that enabled you, or that gives you the impetus to do that. And that's really to come to question. I believe that the Supreme Court will look at all of these details, and the Attorney General of all of these relevant states that have gone to the Supreme Court for interpretation or adjudication one way or the other will articulate that. I, in my view, think that the CBN has not adhered to the law that gives it the capacity or the capability to do this, and that in itself is dangerous and illegal, so to speak.
All right. Now, your presidential candidate also recommended that this coexisting currencies, the new and old, be allowed to continue for the next 12 months. And we have always seen, even in the case of BVN, in the case of NIN, in the case of all of those things where they tell Nigerians there's a deadline, do this before this time, even PVC collection, Nigerians will not do anything until the last week or the last month. And you see everybody running. How sure are Nigerians that even at the end of the 12 months that he's recommending, that everything would have been sorted, where Nigerians would have gotten used to, we're preparing to give off the old notes to work with the new?
I think the experiences of the last couple of weeks will teach Nigerians the need to, embrace the project or the policy going forward. And that's also why engagement is key. That public advocacy must go hand in hand with enhanced infrastructure, with oversight of the process, and and the transparency and integrity of the process. All of those will work together. Certainly, there will be people that will be caught, behind and all of that. But what we want to ensure is that majority of Nigerians are moving, along that line, and we believe that that can be done within the next 12 months with the right impetus from CBN to ensure that the public advocacy that will drive this happens and happens very much robustly. I think it can be achieved.
Right. He also spoke about removal of associated charges on online transactions and bank transfer and payments via POS until current crisis is fully resolved, and that the cost should be seen or considered as rollout expense. Talk to us about that.
So, if we're talking about financial inclusion, bringing people from their own bank to the bank, there must be some level of incentives. There must be people. There's a reason why people put cash or believe in cash, because some people feel that, look, all of these processes also take from them to give the commercial banks and all of that. So at the moment, given the challenges we have with accessing cash, I think it's only right that the central bank employed the commercial banks and other payment institutions to perhaps drop these charges for now. Let the people have access to cash without any form of surcharge eventually, while their infrastructure is upgraded, while all of these bottlenecks are catered for. And what is key is that, when I speak to people, the feedback we get is that the central bank just basically is trying to enrich the banks, take us away from, our comfort zone so that the banks can make more money and do all of that. Of course, you hear people say that, the reason why MFLA has done this is basically to bring down inflation. I think is a very, very wrong premise for the central bank to act. What we believe that what Mr. Emefiele and the central bank is doing is experimentation in what you call the quantitative theory of money. Their belief, from what we see playing out, is that they think that, when you reduce money in circulation by the proportion of the reduction, then inflation also comes down in that proportion. That theory really is about 40 to 50 years old. It was tried in other crimes and it was quickly discarded, because what you find is that, yes, certain goods, prices of goods will come down. And I will give you an example. Perishable goods. Say a farmer that has toiled for months to cultivate a crop, and once it's perishable, they sell it at anything. So you might have the mistaken belief that inflation is coming down. But what you have done is that you're creating a severe deflation. You're creating stagnation, because what you then have, imagine from a 3 trillion naira cash, economy, you're reducing it to 300 billion. What you have is economic strangulation. Jobs will be lost. There will be low and reduced growth. There will be income, household debt will go up. There will be less wages paid for workers. And when we're talking about job losses, really and truly, it first affects the people that we think that we should be protecting the most, the vulnerable and the young population between 15 and 24, because they are those ones that are early to the workforce. They mostly earn in cash, and those are the people that will suffer. When you look at it, real estate industry suffers because they're mostly also cash-based. All of those reductions reduce economic activities and thereby reduce growth. And so we're surprised that a central bank that should have a big picture view of the economy and where we are has now decided to strangulate that economy, to the detriment of growth, to the detriment in the hope that they're fighting inflation. Really, what you should be fighting inflation with are interest rates, yield up and down. Either you take it up or you bring it down. Not really cash, constrictions as we see it.
All right. He talked about the issue of bringing in fintechs to also decongest the system, at least for the next 90 days. We have tried, to do to make online transfers and all of that. It doesn't seem to work the way it is. But the backbone at that level seems to be the same. It's the same financial ecosystem. What more can the fintechs do at a time like this?
The fintech, they have to, like I think we said, they have to invest in their infrastructure. Also, they have to invest in people, because some of the feedback that we get is that there are not enough people to manage the system. They have to invest in all of that. And the central bank, that's why I said that the central bank must work with the fintechs with capabilities. There's all sorts of fintech companies around without the required capability to do this. With those with capabilities should be able to step up within the short period of time to at least ameliorate some of these challenges we have. And I think it's a good way to go if they indeed are mindful of their own infrastructure backbone and, of course, the capability. I think they will make a bit of a dent in what we see. And the idea is basically to quickly decongest the banking hall and the ATM. People should go back to work. We need to get people moving. We need to get people back to work rather than, staying on ATMs. And what we see is that some of these things bring about medical and personal emergencies. So when you're sick or you have personal issues to deal with and you cannot access 2,000, 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira to attend to, it brings about tragedies. You need to go and look at...
Even create anxiety and panic.
Yes. You need to go and look at how many people have lost their lives in the last 2 weeks just because they couldn't get life-saving medical intervention because of inability to get naira. It shouldn't be happening in Nigeria at this time, this day and age.
Right. They talked about the CBN, the NOA, creating enlightenment as we speak. But, right now, a lot of Nigerians do not seem to trust the banking system anymore. I wonder what that will change in the minds of Nigerians towards the banking system.
I think that if there's any effect, most apps that will be much more lasting, is that trust. Nigerians clearly don't trust the banks anymore. And in effect, they don't trust the central bank. The central bank was meant to be the bank that has the interest of the people at heart. You are supposed to regulate the commercial banks to ensure that they are being up and doing in their responsibility to people. But that's really has been eroded in the last 2 weeks. It will take a lot of effort. It will take a lot of leadership that I don't think this present CBN will have the mandate to carry on, given what
if they don't have, who will do it?
No, I mean, it's people. You have to bring fresh crop of people that people can then begin to trust with the process to do it. Of course, it will take a lot of engagement, and that engagement must be sincere. Look, you cannot articulate to Nigerians that we want you to come and swap your currency, and then they bring those currency, and then you're not giving them it's a no-no. That's really deceitful in a nutshell. And so if people don't blame the bank anymore or the central bank, I won't blame them because there's been a deceit, some form of deceit. So what is important is sincerity of purpose, transparency in all of the process from the provision of cash, the distribution of cash, and all of that for people to see that you are making effort to let this tension come down, and then they can begin to see where that trust will be repaired going forward. But it will take a lot of advocacy work from both sides.
All right. The governors in their meeting, when they tried to come up with a resolution on this, part of their statement was that the central bank governor or the central bank as an institution underestimated the cash demand or the naira demand, that Nigerians pool every time that they go, when you talk about the volume. Because you mentioned it earlier that you can't withdraw 3 trillion and then just pump in a few 100 billion. It doesn't, except if it is a strategy to say, okay, we're moving everybody online. So there is this platform where everybody can transact. Right now, we don't want cash anymore. So everybody go online, and then people go online and they're trying it and it's just working like a super highway. The CBN sees that as a strategy. But the governor's forum is saying, I think you are underestimating the naira demand by Nigerians. What do you make of that?
I really don't think it's an underestimation, because I don't want to believe that the CBN does not understand the cash imperative in Nigeria.
If it does, would we find ourselves in this situation?
If it doesn't, then there's something fundamentally wrong.
Okay.
Right. And if it does, and which it should, and then he has done this, then there's something fundamentally wrong. The truth is that you and I know that the bedrock of our economic output, it's really the small business owners, the farmers,
SMEs,
the rural areas,
generally.
all of that. And those people deal largely in cash. There is no, despite our improvement in electronic payment system and different channels, we're still very much thick into that cash process. Look, go to the north, go to my village, go to everywhere. It is still predominantly a cash-based society. So to then try to force us into an electronic payment system without, taking those into cognizance is really being very, disingenuous. The truth is that we feel that the CBN knows this and then are hell-bent on pushing us into that. But clearly, you are leaving the most vulnerable behind. There are a whole lot of people that do not even have the capacity to fumble with the sort of digital equipment that it requires for all of these payment channels. That's one. Secondly, we also look at it that, look, even in a normal climate, I said it before, cash is still very important. That cash, it's just the e-palm platform and all of those are an alternative to cash. You cannot force people to use electronic payment system. What you want to is encourage a lot of us to use it, and then if I feel that I'm comfortable with it, I'll move towards it. If I'm not, I use my cash as much as I can. You cannot eliminate cash to the extent that he has done. Almost 70-80% reduction in cash usage. It's really very unheard of anywhere in the world. Like I said, it's going to cause economic chaos. And what we are afraid of is what you call economic scarring, where people are so deep in debt, are so deep in all sorts of challenges that comes with this sort of policy, that it takes us it gives us tremendous issues, that it takes us tremendous work to get out of it. We're already managing, you do understand, that our growth rate is barely 3%. With APC government has promised, of Asiwaju Bola Tinubu is promising to move it to 7 to 10%. But how do you do that when the key engine room of that growth is being right in front of us within the last 2-3 weeks demonstrated? We've been told that there are about 40% reduction in economic activities as we speak. That's huge for a country that is growing. So it's really surprising that it's the central bank that has done this. I think that's my take on that.
But what do you make of the central bank always telling us initially that it's pushed out enough monies to commercial banks, and commercial banks kept saying, we do not have these monies that you said you have pushed out. And then we now saw videos online of some of these banks stashing these new monies, hoarding them. Okay, that's the word, hoarding them. And then we also saw some persons trading these monies in parties, and then if you want to go get some of these monies, even at the POS points, you have to pay your own money, trading the naira for the naira. What do you make of this
black
situation?
Market now.
That's what scarcity does. What you shouldn't do is give people the incentive to, even have that in the first place. So the buck still stops at CBN. You have almost 3 trillion naira, and you've created 300 billion. There is going to be scarcity that will then make people to become, selfish. And having said that, I also don't think that the amount that has been created or that has been produced and distributed is near enough in any case to meet our demand. Of course, I tell Nigerians that, look, even in the midst of scarcity, we expect some nationalistic behavior where you're doing things, in accordance to the rules and, procedure, no hoarding, no selling in black market. And that's what we talk about, our orientation. And that's where orientation and advocacy is important. At the time of national challenges, we must be selfless in undertaking our responsibilities. Fuel attendants, why are you, cutting corners when there's queue or when there's fuel shortages? It's come to the bankers now. Why are you, hoarding or creating a racketeering, making a racketeering profit from people suffering? These are things that Nigerians also must wake up to. If we condemn the CBN for being incompetent, we must also, show ourselves to be above board. Those money might be small compared to what CBN should do, but let us be fair and transparent in how we distribute it. But beyond that is the claim and counterclaim of what the CBN has distributed and what the banks have received. My understanding from my interaction with various bankers is that, look, they barely give them enough money to cover their ATMs. You understand? One banker told me specifically the money CBN has given us this week was not even enough to cover half of our ATM if we're putting 500,000 naira there. That shows you that there's a problem somewhere. And that's why we say, let there be an inter-government agency that can really sit down and say, okay, how much have you printed? How much are you giving? And not just CBN, because like I said, the trust is no more there. Right. Until there's a pan-Nigerian agency that we believe that can provide the oversight, then we can begin to believe the numbers that come out of this. Now, what is the capacity of the Nigerian printing company to also print the money that we have? What are the plans to print more? What are all of these things you must tell Nigerians? So keeping quiet and burying your heads in what's it called will not solve the problem. It's important to speak out, to engage publicly so that Nigerians know what the real issues are and what they are expecting and how they're expecting this to be fixed and fixed quickly. And I think that it will be in their best interest if they take the advice of Ashwaji Bola Tinubu, because that really is a broad-based advice that can give some succor to Nigerians.
All right, I wonder what you make of, recall when the CBN came up with this thing in the first place, sometime last year. Part of the reason we're coming up with this was the issue of corruption. And they said that close to 85% of the Nigerian currency is out there in some people's houses or homes, in people's pockets, in people's cars, and so on. And they wanted to see how they can bring all of this in as a way of making the system more robust so they can trace or follow the monies anywhere that the money goes. And then they can monitor the system even better. What do you make of that, though?
It's neither here or there. The most important thing is if you say there's a quantum of money out there, you've collected those money, and if you now want to begin to trace that money, then the onus is on you to put that money back into your banking system and let it flow out, not really collect the money and then constrict it. So, and that's the point we make here, that the CBN has gone over and beyond its remit. The remit is collect money at par, and then they collect money and redeem at par or face value. And once you don't do that, according to that law, you've gone against that law, and then you don't have any leg to stand on, so to speak. Of course, we accept that there are corrupt tendencies out there with probably sitting on naira that they shouldn't be sitting on. Whether from the experience of India, whether that's really make this kind of policy makes these people bring that money into the system is debatable, because we've seen from Indian perspective that there are different ways that they can do that. Do you understand? But from what CBN is saying, obviously a lot of this money has come back into its coffers. Then release the money back into the bank, where we can then begin to monitor how it is distributed and where it is going. It's no more outside there. So you've achieved that. So then release the quantum of money that the economy needs to function. That's what we're saying. You can't stifle the economy of the bloodstream and then you expect miracles. It won't happen. And what we're afraid of is that when people are deprived of the ability to earn a living, the ability to move from point A to point B, it becomes very frustrating. Nigerians are really frustrated right now. And that's why we will say that, is it designed for a political agenda or political purpose? Because you just don't understand why a reasonable person will undertake this sort of policy in this manner. And really, that's the key.
Talking about Nigerians and their reaction to this, all of this, we've seen videos of some persons sleeping at the ATM points, even at about 3 a.m., waiting to see what happens if they can get cash. You see people in the banking hall stripping naked, those even weeping that they can't access their cash. Do you think that perhaps this could have some implication or effect on the coming elections? Because we're already counting down to the elections, and we are seeing all of this happen.
Yes, I'll tell you the implications that it's got, and I think it's threefold from a political perspective. First is for and this is speaking from my own party perspective, from our own party supporters that are based, that we've energized, that energized already waiting to vote. Their minds are made up because they see that there is a deliberate effort to tilt public opinion against a particular candidate. And we know who that candidate is. And now some of the points we make is that, okay, I know that some parties have said we will win, we are popular. If you are popular and you will win, why do you need to tie one candidate's hand behind his back? So there are two perspectives to that. You think that, oh, these candidates will have the resources for vote buying. Now, but the point is that we think that what you are doing is to paint the candidate's party in a bad light so that people then, move elsewhere. But what we've seen from our own party members is that, look, they're adamant and even more resolute to vote and let their votes be counted. That's that. Then there are, of course, ardent supporters of other parties. They are happy, they are vilifying the APC for this as in line with the strategy, and that's why you see that their candidates and their flag bearers have never come out to side with the common man because they think that it's to their advantage. But we'll see about that in the next coming few days. But the key deciders are the independents, people of objective mind that are looking to see which candidate has the best policy, the best program, the best interest of the common man. And what they see from their objective stand is, okay, this candidate, this policy, so to speak, for some people might actually be targeted at this person. Why are you hell-bent on, disrupting this process that we expect to be free, transparent, devoid of any unseen hand tilting the electorate one way or the other? And because they can see what is happening, they are beginning to think that, oh, wait a minute, I think if some unseen hand are trying to do this, then this candidate must be the right candidate. This candidate must have something to offer that some people are hell-bent on scuttling. And that's really what we're seeing, where people are beginning to get an idea that, okay, I think this APC presidential candidate is actually the candidate to beat and the candidate to join. And because of all of this machinations there and there, we're going to vote for him. So those are really the three perspectives that I see from the political angle to this, beyond the sufferings of Nigeria and the ability to tilt their thoughts one way or the other.
All right. As we wrap up one way or the other, if this continues, because Nigerians are waiting for what the CBN is going to do, what the president is going to do to ease all of these things, if it doesn't ease off, if the elections come and your candidate wins, what do you think are the first things he's going to do?
I'm not in the mind of the candidates, but if I were to be the candidate, I will easily announce to Nigerians that this policy will be extended as when I come into government, because really and truly there is need for that extension for people to really get into. And then I will begin the process of championing some of this advice that I've given to CBN, basically ensuring, as a president-elect, having informal discussions with the relevant stakeholders as to improving their infrastructure, of course, preferring advice for the next couple of months in terms of the public advocacy that needs to be done and all of that. But I have no doubt in my mind that when Asiwaju becomes the president, this policy will be looked at, the implementation will be looked at, and then it will be much more robust and much more easier for Nigerians to access their money wherever they've put it.
access their money. That's a very key statement there, because that's what Nigerians are actually looking forward to. They want to access their monies. But we'll leave the conversation here now. Thank you, lawyer and member of the APC, Seun Faleye, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Right.